What's up? Hey, Twisted people. It's your girl here, Twisted Woman CKR. And I am so excited to be on the next to last episode of The Stand.
Woo! Penultimate, baby.
Yes. We are doing The Stand 2020/2021, episode 8, review, recap, full breakdown, Easter eggs. We're talking about it all. And I am joined by my guest, host, and partner, Michael Damian.
Yeah, MOON, penultimate. You stuck with us. Thank you very much. And glad to be back. Thank you for having me again. I love being your partner on the show and in life. So
yes.
Aww. Getting a little gushy on
anyway, so we have episode 8, which all of us, thank you all who are joining us in the live chat. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us live. And thank you to those of you who are watching the replay. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And also give this video a thumbs up, as we have been pushing through. Many have questioned in the comment section on these videos, how are you sticking with this season, with this one? And I keep saying when I'm pushing through because I want to see where it goes. And I'm genuinely curious about the story. So, there's of how they interpret this. And I enjoy The Stand. Hey, JJ, and hey, Matt C. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to all of you who are joining us in the chat live as we basically take it on. So episode 8, let's talk about it. Let's talk about our overall thoughts. We're going to talk about overall thoughts. We're going to break down some of the things that happened in the episode. And as it is being said in the chat, and I definitely agree, and I'll talk a bit about it more. JJ is saying in chat, this episode was so short. It did feel short. And I definitely think that's probably because a lot of the action was happening in one major place this time. And we just got a little glimpse of one other spot where Stu was. And so we're going to talk about our overall thoughts, the breakdown of what happened. And then, of course, we have to do it, the comparison between the 90s version and also the book comparison, because there are some differences definitely when it comes to this interpretation, as we've seen thus far. And this episode was no different when it came to certain remixes, whole new scenes that weren't even in the original and things like that. So we're gonna tackle that as well. And I want you all, I put out a question and we always revisit it. I want y'all to let us know, and we're going to answer it too. Which character were you feeling the most this episode? And which character did you dislike the most this episode? And just, keep that in mind as we will be going and bringing that back around soon. And also let us know in the replay as well. Okay, Michael. What were your overall thoughts of episode 8?
Well, I didn't know that they were going to cram as much as they did in one short hour. I like what they did, and there were a few things that I thought, wow, that was interesting. And then, I know it's technically sci-fi horror, but there was a big thing at the end of the episode that kind of bothered me after, thinking about refrigerator questions that I don't know if the writers or the production team really thought it out all the way through, or maybe it was a rewrite. But it happened at the end with the we're allowed to talk about the whole thing, right?
Sorry. Right now, I was on mute. Sorry, guys. Technical stuff. Not specific stuff, but the overall.
Okay. I thought it was very odd. I will be pleasantly shocked if in the finale episode they don't talk about radiation poisoning, because they were too close to that blast zone, and there's no way that in real life, and it didn't happen in the 90s either, that Stu shouldn't have a third arm or something. And how is Tom walking through the debris? I predict it is not going to end well for them at all, long term. But if I'm thinking as far as the story goes, I thought it was definitely a wild third act And it disappoints me a little bit because I feel like the finale episode is just going to be the epilogue, and people are going to think, oh, well, shouldn't what happened now happen in that episode? Because it almost feels just like a long goodbye. And that's what I think the epilogue is going to be.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And, you know, there are those in the chat. JJ is agreeing with you regarding the radiation on how close Stu was to the explosion, which I didn't think he was going to be as close as he was. I personally, just to talk about that briefly, don't think they're going to address that at all.
No.
I don't think there's going to be a thing addressing the potential radiation poisoning, to be honest. I just think that's going to be, I think they added that for dramatic effect, and they're just going to kind of hope you forget about it too, that there should be something, because that would just be way too major for, I think, for Tom and Stu to get radiation poisoning, unless there's going to be some sort of cure for both of them in that regard. And I just don't see them going that route. My overall thoughts of this episode, I walked a line when it came to it. I was somewhat underwhelmed because I think I put a lot on this episode, mainly because I was like, well, a lot of this has been a very subtle interpretation. There wasn't so many grandioso things. And I kind of thought, okay, this has to be the episode where everything is put out on the table and in a big, epic way. And I still felt that they went small. I still felt like it didn't feel as epic to me as I think it could have been. I think some things were improved on from the 90s one, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But for the most part, I was like, okay, I didn't hate the episode, but I was like, being like the stand itself, I mean, that was the title of this episode, The Stand, the namesake of the series. I was like, oh, is that it? Not so much but like, oh, okay. Because it felt so much like the whole season thus far. And we know, as I've been saying, the whole season thus far has felt very subdued. Mm-hmm. And I have some major reasons for that. And I think one of the reasons was I was really waiting for Flagg to really take center stage during the standoff with Larry and Ray and Glen. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was gypped of a few things that I was waiting for. I was gypped of Glen and Flagg actually talking directly, which I thought was going to happen. Mm-hmm. It happened in the 90s one. It was a great scene in the 90s one. They didn't give it to us. He talked in the camera for whatever reason. Flagg didn't come out to the very end. I feel like there's just a thing where this showed, I think, the big deal of it being a real wasted potential of Alex Skarsgård as Randall Flagg. I feel like they really wasted him, because I feel like I never really got to know this character. And for him to be who he was, to feel like he just really wasn't the villain that he could have been, you know? Yeah, no,
he was not. I thought that was very odd. And going off of what we talked about at the beginning of this whole review was sexy Donald Trump, and maybe Randall Flagg was trying to be that equivalent of hiding behind technology and not showing himself, but also rallying up everyone, even though he is not physically present or there for them. And maybe they took that a little bit too far, but besides Randall Flagg being like David Blaine, who was a street performer in the 90s and the 2000s, like all he does is levitate and does cool things with his eyes. So he was very cowardice in this whole thing. And I don't know if they were focusing too much on the coward angle of it.
I agree with you. I think there was just, he played too much of the behind the scenes stage guy. And for someone who seemed to be, I think, in the way that we got the interpretation of him from Stephen King, someone who wanted to have his ego constantly stroked and things. He really was coming off as someone who didn't want to be in the limelight until there were key moments. And I just felt like that was kind of not in character. I felt like he should have been the one doing the trial. For some reason, he had Lloyd doing it and him just watching it. And it was just like, but why? What was the point of that? To show show more of him floating in his hotel room. I feel like the extent of his powers that we have seen this season, the only season, this mini series has been him floating in the air, and that one badass time when he broke the doors off of the window, off of the hinges when he was going after that guy. And he ate that guy pretty much and like had his heart in his hand. That was the most extensive we got. Mm-hmm. A few things in the dreams, but nothing on the level of what I felt like they could have done with the kind of technology we have now and things like that. I felt like the 90s one had more of a personality and was more villainy. If that, I know that's not really a word, but more villainy than our Flagg was. I mean, we hardly really even got chances to really see him flip his lid, like that happened in the 90s when he got angry and it was very obvious. And it only happened one time in this one with a character who was there and gone. And it was like, what? Like, why so subdued? Why are you making this character so subdued? And I just didn't understand the reasoning for that choice. It was such a choice they made, because it was clear they were making that choice. I just don't understand why they went that route with him. I think it was a waste.
It was, very bizarre. And I don't even know if Flagg is alive anymore or he made it out. And maybe I'm predicting in the finale, Flagg made it out the whole time. But I remember in the last one, I know we're not at the comparison thing yet, but Flagg, I believe, turned into a crow and flew away before the blast was happening. Like, he missed the blast by that much. And it just felt like wasted potential for Flagg, which was a shame. And I understand, Zen music lovers, I think he needs to be feared when some of the people realize Glen was right. He stopped floating.
Yeah, we're going to get into that, because that was one of the specific things. I think when you and I were watching it, we definitely pointed that out. We were like, okay, he stumbled, he fell. But it was like, okay, that was the first time this happened. Where was this in other moments? I'm just like, so many things were not explained, or they were expecting us to just get it. And it was like, you got to earn these moments. You have to earn moments like this in storytelling. You can't just throw it out in front of your audience and just be like, hey, get this. That's why that happens. It's like, wait a minute, where was the build up to it?
Yeah, it was weird because Randall Flagg went from being the devil to almost being Santa Claus and Pennywise, because he's like, oh, people don't believe in me anymore. I'm going to lose my powers. And it's like, but how did you cause all of Captain Trips when nobody knew who you were? That's my question. About Pennywise and Flagg do float.
Yeah, that's what Nick is saying in the chat. Yeah. Pennywise and Flagg float. And DJ White is saying in the chat, thanks for joining us, y'all, in the live chat. Is it possible for Randall Flagg to return in episode 9 series finale of The Stand? I think that might be an option. I think that may be something. I think they'd have to at this point, because he just blipped out. It wasn't even like, I was expecting when he did that for all of us to see all his different demon forms or something. And we saw a glimpse of the dirty thing that he turned into when he was sleeping with Nadine, and then he was gone. And I was like, that's it. He doesn't even turn into the crow. Like, what is happening? And so I just felt a little bit gypped on that regard. And I feel like he'd have to return in some capacity, maybe to show us that it's not really done. But then again, I don't know if I think they should do another season of this. I feel like it's kind of like, where are we? I feel like it's one of those things where they had their chance and this was it. This episode was it. And I felt like I was talking about with the choice they've made for Randall Flagg, my issue with that is, one of the things, and, we'll talk a bit more about the comparison with the 90s version, but it was kind of like this idea of this guy has a big ego, so he's going to strut. And I just felt like he stayed in the shadows the whole time. And it was like, why would you, what's that about? Why do that all the time? And I just think it didn't go well, with it. So, yeah.
My big problem was, throughout the whole thing, not just the radiation poisoning, but about the event. I thought it was cool that Larry and Ray were chained down to the pool as it was filling up. However, they talk about Crucifixion the entire show. And that's what I liked about the older miniseries is we actually saw it. It's like Chekhov's gun. If you reference the gun has to go off. And in playwriting and in movies, and it was almost like Chekhov's Crucifixion. Like they talk about crucifying people, but we don't actually.
And then they don't.
See it.
We just see glimpses of it when they're going into the city. They don't actually crucify the people, the traitors, or the bolder people, which would be the major thing to do. And they don't do it. They do a pool scene, and we're going to get into that because I'm just like, what? Penguina is saying in the chat, I'd be lost if I hadn't read the book before. And I think that was my main issue with it too. I felt like they didn't make this audience friendly. They didn't make this something where someone could come in and be like, hey, I haven't read the book. Like with the 90s version, I didn't read the book by then. I mean, I was like, what, 5? But like when I watched it later on or whatever, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I got what it was because they created a story in and of itself with the book material, not so much, hey, you need, what is it when you watch something and you need the companion to make sense of it? You know what I mean? Like I felt like this was that kind of series. Like you needed to have the book open during certain chapters to go like, oh, I get that reference. I understand that reference. Like your Captain America, that was a reference as well to Marvel. But you get what I'm saying? Like that doesn't make much sense to me. And I just want to take a second to say hi to CP, who is joining us briefly in the chat, just dropping in to say hi, Chauncey. I miss you guys. I have no idea what this show is, but I wanted to say hi. Hi, CP. As those of you who follow me may know, I am on the Show Business show with CP, Lindsay, and Fuego, where we talk about show business talk and things on Mondays. It's taking a little bit of a hiatus right now, but it's always great for CP to check in. So, hey. Yeah. So let's jump into the actual things that happen because I mean, the chat's popping off and it's just a lot of stuff going on. DJ White is reminding us that Stephen King wrote a new ending of The Stand and we'll see, you know, he's not the best with endings all the time. He's starting to get it better in the last couple of years. So maybe this one will be a little different. I feel like what I heard is that this is supposed to open it up to other things, you know? So maybe I'm still wondering if the ace in the sleeve, what you call it, ace up the sleeve is that there's going to be a second season. That's what I'm wondering because I'm just like, this can't be it. This had to be the intro piece or something.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. And that, thank you, DJ White. I have hope for the ending. I have no idea what the ending could be other than an epilogue for being in Boulder and eventually Stu finding his way back or not. I don't know what's going to happen to Stu at all. But yeah, no, I have confidence in King. I've thought, hey, maybe just like every Stephen King adaptation, somebody's going to finally get their favorite red bicycle at the end of this. I don't know. But yeah, I'm all for it. If King wrote it and it's new content, yeah, bring it on, King. I love you.
Yeah. People are talking about Nadine's makeup in the chat as well. We got another glimpse of that. Okay. So let's jump into this episode. Honestly, in all the other episodes, my notes are pretty extensive. And this one, as others were noting, it felt kind of short. So I didn't have a lot of notes because things happened. It was a lot of action that went on in this episode, right? Major things, but not a lot of major things, some remixes and whatnot. So I think you and I, Michael, are going into it with the idea that we thought it was okay, right?
Yeah.
Overall. Not spectacular. Like, I mean, I rose the bar because I'm like, well, they got to be bringing it in this one, right? Because everything else has been so subdued and not so much. But things did happen. Okay, so we go into Vegas, and Vegas looks a lot bigger, y'all. It looks, I felt like we were finally outside of the restaurant / casino where people are always randomly screwing. So it seemed like there was like a lot of stuff going on.
Everyone had clothes on.
Yeah, no one was screwing randomly this time.
Yeah.
That was different.
It was very family friendly for a penultimate episode.
Friendly. Yes. And so we had Ray, Larry, and Glen in the cage. And, Glen made a very interesting comparison, I thought, where he was like, these people are following someone based off of devotion and not really having much evidence. And it was interesting because Larry and Ray were looking at him and was like, that's not the same. Because, it seemed like he was comparing the people of Vegas to the people of Boulder and following Mother Abigail. And I thought, and, Glen made a point. He was like, well, isn't it in a way? Like we chose our side, they chose their side, and Ray points out like, no, these people are evil. What did you think? Did you think that he kind of made a point there?
Yeah, because I think we talked about this a few episodes back. It's almost like containment theory, and these people chose to live the way they are. Why are we caring? And it's like, oh yeah, no, these people are evil. So it's definitely two sides, and it goes back to like when this book was written during the Cold War, of like the left versus right, east meets west, with Boulder and Las Vegas. And yeah, it just seemed like old world philosophy mixed with a little bit of the new. Like, why don't we just leave them alone?
Yeah, I definitely I felt like it was good. I wanted more of Glen's philosophical questions throughout the series. I thought that would have been great because and that's why I felt like I was gypped off of his conversation directly with Flagg, because I felt like he was one of the people who really saw Flagg for what he was when he finally met him. So, you had that moment. And so it's like with this, I felt like when he posed that question, I'm like, there's truth to that. But it's also like, well, you see what they're doing in Vegas versus building a real community and stuff, and community and things like we're doing in Boulder. So it's not exactly the same. It is the same in the sense that, well, we have faith in her. They have faith in him in different ways, because Glen later points out that it's fear. It wasn't fear of Mother Abigail that drove people to Boulder. It was hope, which is very different. It's a very different feeling. One you can build with, the other one you can mainly destroy. So they got a little philosophical with it. So I appreciated that, because I felt like sometimes this series has been missing that depth of why some of these stories exist, And
it also,
go ahead.
It also felt very modern about the past 4 or 5 years when they talked about fear. And like I felt like the political commentary in this was very strong and very directed.
Yeah, exactly. DJ is asking in the chat, between the Skarsgård brother, I always say their name wrong, Skarsgård brothers, of who do you think it's better, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, or Alexander as Randall Flagg? Well, I think they gave Bill a lot more to work with Pennywise, and they gave Alex to work with Randall. Yeah. So I have to lean. For those of you who watch my channel, my other videos, and I do horror movie reviews and things like that, I did not particularly care for the new Pennywise, the new It. I didn't care for chapter 1, or I definitely didn't care for chapter 2. So for me to say that, I think that says a lot. I feel like Alexander had more potential. I felt like he could have said, they could have given him more to do.
Yeah. It's weird because they're almost the same character.
Do you think?
Yeah, because if you don't believe in them, they lose their power.
Yeah, that's true.
What took me out of this.
Here, like, right?
It's where, like, you grew up, and then I can't float anymore. Damn.
That's real. That's right. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that. And okay, so they start the trial. So the trial happens, and it's this Judge Judy TV show. We got Rat Woman, who, if no one saw the 90s version or read the book, would know that was Rat Woman at this point. You would just think that she was a secondary henchman. Okay, sure. So she's the judge, and then you have Lloyd being the prosecutor and the bailiff and whatnot. And so you have them kind of saying, basically Lloyd is presenting to Larry and Ray and Glen that if they basically rebuke Mother Abigail and say that they no longer believe in her, that they can stay in Vegas. And of course, that's not what happens. And we have Glen's very big moment that happens here. Glen basically seeing things for what they are, talks directly to Flagg, not in the way I liked, but through the video, and then also to Lloyd, and says, this is fear. You guys aren't real. This isn't power. This isn't real hope. And, he doesn't necessarily believe that. He kind of peeps Lloyd. He's like, you've never shot anyone in your life. I can tell, and unfortunately, Lloyd feeling the pressure basically does what he has never done before, which is kill a man. And so that was a very poignant part for Lloyd as a character. So that was very good. And, Glen's part was awesome. Like I said, I felt like they could have utilized Glen a lot more as well, with the philosophical questions of what it means to be in this new world and things like that. So Glen is dead. So did you feel like what did you think about that point?
Well, when Glen, I thought, going back to Chekhov's gun, literally the character Lloyd couldn't fire a gun, but his friend, I believe, is the actor who played Lloyd, Greg Kinnear?
I think so.
Cool. I thought he did a great job. And he couldn't shoot the gun, but at the end of the penultimate episode, he can shoot the gun. So by that meaning of Chekhov's gun, it actually was followed out. And yeah, I liked Lloyd in this. He had a lot of depth. He had more than he had in the original 90s one. And I thought it was a fitting end, but I don't want to being told in the comments that Nat Wolff is Lloyd. I apologize for...
No, you got it right. Greg Kinnear was Glen. That's who you said did a great job, right? In his
Yeah. He did a great job. I think both of them did. They were two very powerful actors giving a very powerful scene. And I know I'm thinking of the actor more than the characters, because they alone were more powerful than most of what happened in this show.
Yeah, I thought it was a powerful scene. I think it would, and we'll talk about the differences of how Glen died in this one versus how he died in the 90s one. But I thought it was poignant because he played his part. You saw it. He affected that one guy who the camera started to follow around. So you knew he was going to end up saying something, the guy with the burgundy shirt or whatever like that, the button up. And Lloyd shooting Glen to death, I think, really rattled a few people. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of this question, as Ray and Larry talked afterwards, where Ray, I think this was also a poignant moment for Ray. She, with all her faith in Mother Abigail, started to wonder, she didn't want to die necessarily. She didn't want to just be in pain. And she wanted to know what it was all for. It was kind of like this question of, did we just come here to die? Like, what's the point? Although we, as the viewer, we're seeing the point. We're seeing that them being there with their faith, with their staunch opposition to Randall Flagg, was an example to others to start to stand up, to kind of question things. So I thought that was poignant because I did see that. And I did like that they were doing it a bit more public when it came to the three of them being there, because you didn't get that necessarily in the 90s one in terms of their wording and their words being heard and people seeing their example, serving by example. So I thought that was a lot more poignant. But we lost Glen, and, that was a very poignant moment because that impacted Flagg's power more so, I think, not because Glen was shot per se, but because what it did to the people who saw it and to Lloyd, who had to do it. So we see that Randall's powers kind of falter because, like Pennywise, he needs people to believe in him and fear him for his power. Yeah. Which I don't really think that's canon. If we know Randall Flagg or the Dark Man from other stories he's been in, but okay, that's what's happening in this version of The Stand. So we're seeing that. And then, Ray's worrying. And I thought that was a very vulnerable moment. And that's when Nadine comes in.
Yeah.
Nadine.
Oh,
Yeah, who still
I
I honestly think she looked a little better this time
she did.
than when we left her at the end of the last episode. I felt like she wasn't as horrible looking.
Yeah, no, I think motherhood was definitely starting to become on her in a very nice way. I didn't know how that baby thing was going to go. I thought it was going to go full on alien. Like, how is the baby going to be born? Because I thought it was going to break through, and there's like blood and everything. I thought it was going to be a little bit of the heart. It was cool to see Amber Heard fall out of a window. And that's all I got to say about that. But she fell out of a window very nice. Yeah, I like how they didn't really change her up that much.
Yeah, I think, my thing with that, and for those of you who have been with us for this season, thank you for that. And who have seen what I've said and heard what I said about the Nadine and Larry situation. I have been back and forth about them, more so on the not so convinced that they were so like enamored with each other, because I just felt like there wasn't a lot of buildup. We didn't get to see how Larry and Nadine and Joe traveled to Boulder. We just got that one episode that referenced that they met up and then they got there, and then we see that Larry has a fondness for her, or we're told, and we're shown through one quick, semi-sexy dream that Nadine has a thing for Larry. In that moment when Larry doesn't reject her, but tells her maybe later, and she still goes to Flagg. So, I wasn't as convinced that they were, set to be together necessarily, or that they had this really strong emotions with each other. And so I was pleasantly surprised of that. It was a very intimate moment where she goes to him, and he even says, he was like, you kept the kids away, you kept me away. And she says, and she's like, she's kind of delusional, she's like, well, I didn't want anything to happen to you, I didn't want you to get hurt. And I was like, I'm kind of sad for her at this moment. There's still some goodness in this woman. She wanted to talk to Larry alone, probably to convince him to come over to Flagg's side, where she's like, I want to talk to Larry by himself. Like, I don't want to talk to Ray because Ray called her out, but she's like, I just want to talk to Larry. And then Larry shows her herself. And I think I think I was one of the people who predicted, I was like, I feel like Larry's going to be the one to be able to let her see how she really looks. And I think it had to be in Larry's hand, the thing to show her, you don't realize how bad you look right now. And it took, because her trust in Larry or something, or her connection to him, for her to be able to see what it really was. So I thought that was a great moment. And that is something that we've never gotten before, actually, because up to this point in the book itself and in the 90s version, Nadine actually dies before Larry even gets there. So to have this kind of final moment between them, I think actually really worked. I think that was a great addition.
I thought that was really good rewriting.
Yeah, I thought that was a really great addition to the story. And then she goes into labor. And that's when she starts to pick up that something's wrong, because we're seeing the hand, the little baby hand, and it's like that don't seem like it's coming through the regular place. And so where does it come from? Where's it going to come from? Right? Like you said, are we going to have an alien moment? And I honestly, like you said, I was like, is this baby going to be born? Or are we going to see Nadine basically, split open, and then the baby comes and then somehow dies some other way, or maybe doesn't die at all? And then we have Flagg just kind of chilling there, with his cigar and stuff. Once again, just like, like JJ is saying in the chat, Randall was just chilling. And I liked it, but I was like, I don't know. I just feel like, when was it decided that he had such a dismissive way about him? Like, semi-depressed demon here or something, who's just kind of like, this is cool. Like, I'm about to have my kid, but it's like, she's about to be split open. And then, Nadine realizes in this, she's like, I was never meant to survive, was I? I was supposed to just bring this baby in, AKA this baby is supposed to tear me open. Is that what's supposed to happen here? I'm going to get basically drained and killed. And so and those of you who might know in the chat, and, you know, because I don't think it ever really gets to that point in any other adaptation, because she ends up killing herself long before she even goes into labor. And I wonder, was that the intention in the original story, that Nadine wasn't supposed to be his queen? Because I kind of felt like he did kind of treat her like a trophy, showing her off and stuff in the other adaptation and in the book. And so it seemed kind of weird that in this one they kind of made it so that she was disposable in this one. So I didn't really get that she was made to be the more disposable in this one. Like, why that? Why all that just to have the baby for her to just be split open and not to be, you know, that. So that was a little weird to me. Did you think that was a little weird that they kind of, I'm not going to say remixed it, but they took the interpretation that Nadine was just a vessel?
I kind of like that, honestly, because Nadine was so sure of what she was doing, you know, besides the Larry situation, that, you know, if Randall Flagg is a demon or the devil deceives people. And so who are we to say that the devil wouldn't deceive the woman or the mother of his child? And I thought that was a really cool change up. It's like, oh, yeah. And then she realized she's in too deep.
I get that. I mean, eventually she had to make some type of decision, right?
She was still good, kind of.
Yeah, she was still good. I feel like you're right. Like, she had to make some kind of decision, and people are noting in the chat that Rat Woman was just doing it all. She was in entertainment. She was the person helping with the kid. I think that was her, even though the woman looked like she had different makeup on. So maybe it was her, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. People didn't stand out that much in this iteration. No. So I don't know. I felt like it was a little weird. And her realization wasn't necessarily even that, why would I want to bring whatever is in me into the world? It was more so, I'm supposed to die. You're going to kill me. You are willing to let me die. So it's kind of like, it wasn't necessarily selfish. So it wasn't necessarily a selfless act of her to jump out the window. It was more like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to die anyway. Well, I'm going to take your kid with me. While I think in the other iterations, it was more like, you don't deserve to have this baby. I'm going to sacrifice myself so that you don't get what you want. So I felt like it was a little bit different in that regard. And of course, before she jumps out the window, because she's able to break the window with her pendant that he gives everyone, I guess is very powerful when she chooses to let it go. And which is also different from the book. And we got to talk about that, of how she was able to kill herself in that regard. And she says right before she jumps that Larry was right. And Randall hears this. He doesn't like that. And basically she jumps. He's just kind of looking, you know, it's a very tense scene. I thought it was cool, the jumping scene, watching her kind of go to the ground. It was like a fallen angel, kind of the way they were making her look as she went down. So I thought that was a very good aesthetic choice, you know. And then she goes, and then basically we see that Randall later says waste. He says waste not, want not, and he sends her head. He sends her head to Larry, which was pretty sad. But I think it also gave Larry some resolve, because he tells Lloyd. And then when they come and get him, he was like, you think y'all sent her head in here to make me feel some type of way. But in reality, you know, it just shows me y'all time is almost up. Like, if he does this to his queen, what do you think he's going to do to you? And I thought that was very poignant. And him, Larry just seemed like he had finally got it. I felt like up to that point, you were I was anyway, wondering what's so special about Larry necessarily, because he hadn't necessarily showed his maturity and resolved up to that point. No. It was still kind of like, I'm just kind of here. I don't know why I'm here. And I felt like this was the episode where he really kind of came into his own. And unfortunately, it was the episode where he died, but it was the episode where he really had his resolve. And I really came to really like what he was doing. So I love that moment where he told Lloyd and the other henchmen, you know, y'all all are expendable to this guy. Does that not make you feel a certain type of way? What did you think about Larry and those moments he was having this episode?
I agree with you. I disagree a little bit because at the beginning of the entire show, he was doing drugs, and he was living the life of the rock star that he wanted, and he owed people a lot of money, like out of pocket. He was in trouble, but I think he gradually matured a little bit, episode by episode, and this kind of was like the peak Larry of his redemption, and realizing that he's not a pop star. This is like his purpose that he needs to do. And I thought maybe they didn't execute his arc the best way imaginable. I mean, we only heard "Baby, Can You Dig Your Man?" and it was from other people and not him, but that's another topic that we only have one more episode after this to keep talking about. But I thought Larry actually grew, but the show didn't do a good job of showing it.
I definitely saw his growth through Joe and Nadine, funny enough. But I just felt like there were only spurts of that up until this episode, where I think, for me anyway, I mean, I see what you're saying. For me, I felt like as an audience member, it just finally showed through to me that, that it was different. And, just Diane is saying in the chat, thanks for joining us, Diane. I'm just disappointed. The characters just seem hollow. I'm not invested in any of the characters except for maybe the little boy and a little bit of with Harold. Why is that? Definitely. I think that's what a lot of us have been feeling, that there's just been a disconnect with the characters this miniseries, which is very weird. I don't know if it's the storytelling. I don't know if it's the way they chose to go about the chronological order of it. So we didn't get a chance to really sit with some of the characters for long enough. I feel like with Harold, one of the reasons it's kind of by default, you kind of have to feel something for him, because they made us spend so much time with Harold. And then now we're getting to spend some time with Stu, who we should have been really spending a lot of time with for a good chunk of this series, and he was kind of in the backdrop. So I just feel like they shortchanged us on a lot of the characters, unfortunately. But, we have that with Larry. And then, we see more and more that Lloyd is doubting things. Lloyd is doubting the situation. He's hesitant. He's talking to Rat Woman about he's afraid that, that Flags might be, mad at him for shooting Glen. But, Randall doesn't seem to care at that point. He doesn't really. That was the thing about Randall Flagg throughout this. There was never an inner monologue. That was the problem for me. And I know maybe some people find that cheesy, but I just felt like he's got to talk to somebody about what he wants, doesn't he? For us to really get who this character is and what's his point or his purpose. And we never got that. I mean, we kind of got that when he first recruited Lloyd, but not in a deep sense. It was just to kind of get Lloyd along. And that's why I wanted that moment with Glen. Cause I was like, well, maybe when Glen's goading him, he'll say something and we'll get a little bit less of the showman of Randall Flagg, less of the cool guy who has the power brimming under the surface, and more of the dude who's like, this is why I took over Vegas. This is why I want to kill off the witch and Boulder. There's a reason to my madness that only, that I feel, so that I could, connect with this character a bit more than him. I've never seen a villain who's just kind of ho-hum about what he wants to get. Like, I could take it or leave it, My girl just jumped out the window. Man, that sucks. Okay, send her head over there. It was just like, whoa, man. Like, do you feel anything? Like, what do you want this, don't you? You know what I mean? Like, I wanted more from him as a villain. And even in his most poignant moments, there was a lack.
Yeah, I am trying to figure out how to word this. Yeah, he was like, right?
Yeah, and if they had not made this the Harold Lauder show, it would have been much better. I think a lot of us were feeling, I was actually quite happy when Harold died last episode, because I was like, okay, maybe now in these last two episodes, we could really get a showcase of the other characters. And lo and behold, Larry starts to show through. I'm like, oh, finally, someone else getting a little bit more lines and time. And look how much they emerge as an essential character here. Ray, oh my gosh, Ray got more lines this episode to talk, and we got to know about her not liking pain and stuff. Hello, backstory for Ray after 9 episodes, after 8 episodes. Like, wow, we're definitely, a lot of things with that. Rob O, who is joining us in the chat, said, I didn't like that God's wrath only felt apparent to Flagg. I feel like most of the Vegas residents didn't understand what was really taking place. I hope for more of an, oh crap, God's here moment. Yeah, a lot of the way that, and we'll get to that in a second, the way whole execution of that happened was also a little bit anticlimactic. It looked cool, but it didn't have the emotional resonance that I was hoping for in that moment. Go ahead.
It felt like the blandest superhero movie ending ever. Like, oh no, there's a faulty machine, zip, zap, zap. And it was like, what's happening? And then the main bad guy's like, oh, well, I'm in trouble. And it felt like a watered down Marvel or DC movie because they all borrow endings from each other. But yeah, I just don't. I did like the fact that the cloud did a literal hand.
Yeah, hand of God. So we saw
hand of God was great, but nobody inside could really know what was going on. And I agree with JJ0307. Yeah, Ray was such an actualized character with too little screen time. And going back to what we're talking about with Harold. Harold should have died at the end of season 1. Then season 2 is about going to Vegas, and then 3 is the actual stand.
Yeah, if they had really made this go out a bit more. Penguin is saying in the chat, Larry goes from the selfish a-hole to selfless martyr, but much of his growth occurs off screen. Too few episodes for so many characters. Exactly. Victoria Swift. Thanks for joining us in the chat. She's like, I did like everyone getting zapped though. That was very nice. We got to talk about some of the improvements in terms of certain effects and stuff. But it was like, if you could do this, look at what else you could have done. Oh my gosh. It was like they showed us the potential, but then they didn't actually actualize it in other areas. It was like they picked and chose where they wanted to be awesome at.
Okay, maybe not so superhero-y, but it felt like a watered-down Raiders of the Lost Ark when nobody opened the Ark. The Ark was just a bomb, and then God appears, and it's like zip, zap, zip, everyone's blowing up. I was just waiting for like faces to melt.
Yeah.
I
think Zen actually touches on something that we could talk about, as well as we talk about this episode and the kind of the way they've handled this, which is Zen said, it seemed like they were trying to remove the religious aspect from the stand as best they could, and it diminished the story. And I actually agree with you. I think it's a choice. They made a clear choice not to have the whole, Mother Abigail was doing the whole thing of talking to God and things like that. And she did mention it, but it wasn't as overt as I feel like, as overt of like evil and God's way, like, because it was God's hand. What hand was that? And it was just like, that wasn't as dominant. And I think it took away the epicness, the potential epicness of this story, because you don't know it. You can't, if you're going to diminish something, you got to play something else up, right? So they could have played up this idea of just this villain and people realizing that they need to get rid of this villain. So that was where they needed to, if they're going to diminish the idea of good versus evil and this idea of God versus, Satan's apprentice or whatever, then you have to play up that, okay, there's an evil force. No matter what you believe in, there's an evil force here. And maybe there are some forces that we don't know about that are helping us get rid of this guy. But they just kind of muddled in the middle of it all. There was a little bit of discussion about God. There's a little bit of interpretation. Joe senses stuff, but it's never really explained. Nick is supposed to be super special, but that's never really put out there as to why necessarily. They just left a lot of things vague, and that because of that, when you don't make a decision in storytelling, and it's like this idea of leave it up to the readers or the watchers, I think it's I'm not going to call that straight out lazy, but I'm going to say you open yourself up for a slippery slope of people not, you got to have some conviction in storytelling. You got to have something you're trying to say here. And I just felt like they were just trying to retell a story of something someone else already said. And I feel like if you're taking, when you adapt a book or you adapt someone else's work, it's because you want to make a point with the work. You're using the work as a tool to put a point across. And I just felt like this series didn't have a point when it comes down to it.
Yeah, no. I want to make a prediction. Episode 9 is just King waking up in pre-Captain Tripp's nursing home that he was in. You know, like that poster that Tom and Nick ran into? It's just another day. King wakes up at the end. He's in the nursing home, and it's the very last episode of that soap opera dynasty all over again. Mm-hmm. That none of this ever happened.
It was all a dream.
It was all a dream. But then somebody in the waiting room of the nursing home coughs.
Okay.
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, and Give Me Shelter is saying the religious element should have remained in this retelling. The Stand possesses elements of the Lord of the Rings and biblical end time scriptures. Exactly. And I get it. You know, I totally understand. You know, it's 2021. Some people, the way they feel about religion and things like that, it can get kind of murky. You don't want to turn off people. But I feel like in fantasy, dark fantasy, and horror, like, that's like someone redoing The Exorcist and then trying to be very vague about who she was like possessed by. It could have been anything. I mean, come on, this is a demon and she needs the Lord. Like, that's what this story is. Whether you're religious or not, we all can enjoy a good story, you know, whether you believe in it or not. Just like we watch stuff about Greek gods and things. I mean, they don't suddenly change Zeus's name because, hey, maybe you don't believe in Greek gods. No, this is what the story was. It's cool. I'll watch it. You know, I may not believe, but I don't mind because I appreciate the story it's telling. You know, same thing when there's religious stories. It doesn't have to get all, you know, it's not like, you know, you have something at the end screen. And if you too would like to join the quest of Jesus or something, you know, like that's not happening at the end of the show. So it's okay to keep the religious aspect or the spiritual aspect in the story. What was the point of taking it out?
I mean, like Kirk Cameron didn't direct this movie, who's like a religious director, and you know, it wasn't like full of Hallmark actors. Like they
maybe would have made it better. At least I would know Kirk has a point.
I think Candace Cameron Bure would have been a great Franny.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Betty in the chat is saying there wasn't an inner dialogue with the 1993 miniseries either. That's true, but this is the thing about that. And my opinion is that you didn't need it in the 1993 series. You know why? Because he had enough interactions with other characters where his inner ways came through. When he killed Dana in the original one, we didn't even know her name in the 1993 one, but you knew that this person was someone who was really getting to him, that he couldn't figure out who Tom Cullen was. And it was like, you get a glimpse. This guy has some insecurity issues. He's not all that great. We got that from that interaction, as opposed to in this one where she kills herself and he's like, and he goes and sits down and the episode ends. And you're like, well, does he care? Is he mad or is he not mad? What's this about? You know? And I felt like because those interactions lacked in this one, I would have preferred the inner monologue for this one. But you're totally right. That wasn't the case in the 93 one, but I felt like the 93 one didn't need it, you know? So, you know, it's kind of like, where's the balance at in that regard? And so, you know, as we go further, they decide they're not crucifying Larry and Ray. They are drowning them because it goes with the speech that Randall makes of, we're going to drown the rats, and then they're going to go bomb Boulder and the Mother Witch and things like that. And, you know, Larry points out that Flagg doesn't know that Mother Abigail has died. What did you think about that? I kind of understood that as maybe Larry was pointing out that Flagg isn't all knowing necessarily.
No.
Did you, and let us know in the chat and also the replay, do y'all think that's what was the point of that? I was a little confused. I was also confused why Flagg didn't seem to know that Mother Abigail died, to be honest.
I think because he was already weakened and he didn't realize it.
Okay, so you think it had to do with his powers more so, and that Larry was realizing this guy's growing weaker.
Yeah, I think Flagg grew weaker before we even knew it. Because normally, like in every supernatural thing, when somebody dies, there's normally a character that's like, I don't know what's wrong, but something is. And you know what I mean? And that didn't happen. And he couldn't do his fancy David Blaine magic anymore. And I think not being able to communicate with the most powerful spiritual figure on Earth America besides him, I think that is a gigantic weakness. And in a way that already showed that Mother Abigail won without still having to breathe or live.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I genuinely just didn't. I was like, okay, because I thought about it too. I'm like, does he not know Mother Abigail died?
Yeah. This picture, by the way. Oh, sorry, what?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I just, for those of you who are watching, I just put up a picture of Lloyd with the.
It's my favorite part of Hamilton, by the way.
Yes, Hamilton vibes, hardcore. Yeah, it was interesting because I felt like that was Larry understanding this guy's not as powerful. He even said to Ray once they met back up when they were being taken to the pool, they were like, their time is almost up. And Lloyd was like, our time is almost up. You mean your time? Because Larry had already realized, he was like, this ain't it for y'all. This is it. It's over for y'all. You know what I mean? So he kind of just got it. Although Lloyd, precious Lloyd here was, he was going through the motions, but he was more and more just not believing in what was actually happening. So we got that as well, which I liked. I liked that Lloyd was coming to his senses a bit more. And so, you know, we got that. And so we get this whole thing with them drowning. And while the water's raising for them, Lloyd comes in and he's basically saying, what do you have to say? Your last words. And Larry says, I shall fear no evil. He keeps saying, I will fear no evil. And that was, I will fear no evil. And that was a very cool scene, I thought. You know, he kept getting beat. He kept saying, I will fear no evil. He kept saying, I will fear no evil. And that once again played into the idea of them being such a big influence, their resolve against this guy who was ruling by fear to just simply be the ones to stand up to it. And I think that actually has some poignant it's also a poignant and relevant moment for all times with people. A lot of the time it takes that one person to stand up first for others to follow. And I do think that was one of the messages that at least this episode was saying. I don't think the series was saying that at the whole point, but I think this was what they were using in the sense of the representation that Larry and Ray gave in terms of saying, I will fear no evil. And then we start hearing a random person, I will fear no evil. As though they just start yelling. And I was like, who said that? What did you think about that?
I thought it was fitting because you're like right down the road from Caesar's palace, and a big enemy like at the time of Caesar, like maybe right before, was Spartacus, and that movie, like, I'm Spartacus, when they're trying to find him. So it was a very I'm Spartacus moment in a very Las Vegas type way. I thought that was a very interesting substitution because my favorite part of the whole miniseries in the 90s was when this little minor character who gets wrapped up in Flagg, and he symbolizes that not everybody working for Flagg is evil. Some of them just wanted to go to Vegas. And when he comes out, when he comes out and he realizes that people are getting crucified, he's like, wait a minute, this isn't what America's all about. And he dies.
Yeah,
so,
he gets killed.
Yeah.
And we kind of had that character this episode, although this was our first time seeing him. I think in the other one, in the 93 one, that character had kind of been throughout here and there. But in this one, he kind of came from nowhere. He was clearly affected when Glen was shot. We saw a close up on his face. And the first thing I thought, okay, they keep going back to this guy. He's probably going to do something significant, perhaps. And so eventually he too says, I will fear no evil. And he gets jumped by some of these people. And there's like 2 to 3 women. People start yelling, I will fear no evil, because they're uprising. And this probably had been brimming right under the surface for some time. But it took Larry and Ray's and Glen's sacrifice to push it over the edge, to cause things to go in disarray as it did, to cause Flagg to lose his powers in this sense and not be able to control people with fear anymore. So he was trying to say, kill those people, but he's clearly losing control. So this was the first and only episode where we saw that he was losing control of Vegas, because we got no hints of that up to this point, that he was losing control or that there were people who weren't totally on board with him. But this was the episode that it showed, and it all happened in one thing. So we saw that. And then as this is happening, Trash Can Man is driving through. Somehow he got in. He's decomposing. He has the warhead. He seems not to be very good with, even though he's very devoted to Randall Flagg, to not be good at following directions, to take it to the airfield, but to take it to inside the thing. And it was kind of weird. I mean, it was very different from what was supposed to happen, but we'll get into that with comparison. But, and you know, it was like everything was happening at once, right? Water's going up on Larry and Ray. Trash Can done came in with a thing. And, you know, Lloyd has now said no to Randall. So there's a whole thing going on. What did you think of the look that Trash Can had?
I was waiting for that. I was waiting to watch him get that way. And I thought his character development was garbage compared to the 90s one. I'm sorry we're not comparing, but it's just really hard sometimes when you can. Because we saw the original Trash Can. He was burnt. He was fried. His skin was so charred it was oozing. And all we saw forever was in Trash Can the scars that he had that have healed for a while now. And then we just go from one episode to that to the next one where he's kind of just almost melted onto the nuke. And I guess I'm not a pyro, but I just would have loved to have seen him get the way he did. It just looked like melted white chocolate. Like, that's pretty much it.
I kind of felt like they were doing this melted white chocolate. I kind of felt like they were doing the same thing that they did with Nadine, that kind of reveal, because they didn't do a close up of him until we finally saw him. We just saw people screaming at him. So then we finally see, and I felt like that was the same kind of reveal. Like, look how ghastly he looked all of a sudden. I feel like that was kind of the deal. And when Randall Flagg is like, I told you to go to the thing, he's like, my life for you. And it's just like, okay, so he just isn't. Like he's gone, you know, he's just out of it and he's kind of doing the thing and that's that. And so I kind of like the reveal, but once again, out of nowhere, you know, I felt like they messed up the way that he was supposed to really play a role in the story. And so they had to have it happen this way instead. So I felt like they wrote themselves into a corner with this one. Victoria is saying in the chat, I will fear no evil, just a locked door in a casino. Why was the door? I don't know, girl. I don't know why they locked the door. That was kind of weird. Maybe for Lloyd to say unlock the doors, get them out of here. I don't know. Maybe it was for a line. There was a few things where it was just like, this is elaborate. For what reason? I don't know. They should have just had them being crucified. But I also think that maybe they didn't want to do the crucifixion because maybe the water thing seemed more ethereal. Maybe that was an easier way for them to go, but as opposed to everyone else in Vegas who was dying by fire and they were dying by water instead. You know, that maybe that was like kind of a mercy for them. In a way, I don't know. What do you think, Michael, of why they had to die differently than everybody else with the water?
Wow. Yeah, that is actually a very good point. Maybe it was like they're legit the good ones and we're going to baptize them instead of crucifying them. And if you go the biblical way, the first time like God killed everybody was by water and then the rest would be fire. Maybe it was also Lloyd being sympathetic deep down. Like, you know, maybe we don't want to like, you know, drive a spear in your ribs or like nail you to a cross or anything. Maybe it was just religious symbolism of
like baptism.
Baptisms, yeah.
Born again. Maybe there was that. Maybe there was that symbolism of baptism for sure. Maybe that was, you know,
because at first, going back to the pool, when Nadine died, I didn't know the pool was empty. Maybe it was because of how late we watched the episode last night. Because
I don't think she would have been able to hit the ground like she did if the water was in there.
Yeah, but I know, like, if you fall from a distance like that high up from several feet, if you fall like belly flop smack in the water, you can die that way from like a distance. And I didn't know that it wasn't full. I thought she was just gonna die in a pool like Scarface. And spoiler alert, it's been 40 years almost, but yeah, I thought that I was pleasantly surprised when the pool was empty.
Yeah, they cleaned her up.
Yeah, they cleaned her up, and to have those two die in the exact same place that Nadine died.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting.
Yeah, no, it was that seemed to be the main pulpit for him, although they were crucifying people outside of the city, but for whatever reason they wanted to do a different kind of thing here. So
but it's Vegas, and in the last one, the 90s one, they crucified them in the ritzy Vegas way. Like, it was all decked out. There were like flower girls and everything, like showgirls. And this one, they're just chained to a pool. Like, you don't go to Vegas. If crucifixions were legalized, you wouldn't go to Vegas to watch two people drown in a pool when Circus Soleil is doing amazing crucifixion acts down the street, which we never got to see. But yeah, it was a little lackluster of a killing. It was very much a mercy killing.
In a way, but that's weird because Lloyd wasn't the one that decided. It was Flagg who decided it. So why I don't know. It just seemed a little like you said, like you don't mention crucifixion and then you don't do crucifixion, since that was a big thing that they were doing. And then we start to see the hand of God. And some of y'all were saying in the chat, and maybe you can also let us know in the replay comments if you noticed it. I think you actually pointed it out to me because I hadn't seen it at first, but then you said there's the hand of God right there, because the smoke was formed like a hand, which we'll talk about it in the 90s one, how it was a little bit more cheesy in the 90s one because, technology, there's but so much they can do. But I thought that was a really cool effect of the hand. And then I guess the finger or whatever going through that spiral thing and then causing all that various thunder that never hit Larry and Ray, which was good, and only hit everyone around. Julie got hit. You kind of thought that Lloyd wasn't going to get hit. And then he doesn't get hit with the lightning. He gets hit with the thing. It just misses him, and then it comes back around and kills him. And people start wandering out. They finally start to run out. It wasn't when as someone said in the discussion, it wasn't when the decomposing man came in with a nuke. It was only then when the thunder starts that people start to realize we should run out of here. So we got that, and I thought it was a cool effect. I at the same time, I did feel like it was a bit anticlimactic when I don't know, what was Lloyd? Oh, not Lloyd. What was Flagg singing? Was he singing "Baby, Can You Dig Your Man"? Was he singing some lyrics from that, or was it lyrics from another song? Let us know in the chat and in the replay if you know, because this is the thing. I never heard all of "Baby, Can You Dig Your Man," this 2021 version, so I couldn't even tell if he was singing line from the song that I hardly got to hear this whole mini-series. So I'm like, if he's singing a line from that song, I'm so mad because I have yet to hear the whole song, so I can't even tell if that's what he's singing it from. But maybe it was something else.
Yeah. And I was kind of hoping maybe it was the Flu Buddy jingle that we never heard at the beginning.
Oh, yeah, that commercial, the Flu Buddy sing from the 90s one.
That is a deep cut, and I don't expect everybody to get that. But
yeah. I don't know. Giving shelter, saying anyone else believe it was Mother Abigail coming through and not God at the casino. Well, this is the thing. I was waiting for someone's voice to ring out. Yeah. And no one's voice rang out. I thought it was going to be Mother Abigail telling Larry and Ray to come home or something, because that's what they did in the 93 one. I don't know. Maybe that's kind of cheesy to let us know that they were at least going to heaven, but that didn't happen. Like others have noted, they took out the more overtly supernatural aspects of this show. Of this story for some reason. So we didn't get to hear who it was. Once again, they just kept it very vague. So we don't know whose hand it was. Was it Mother Abigail? Was it God? Was it Michael, the archangel? Who knows? The archangel? Who knows? Because they kept it very vague. But I did think it was a very cool thing. But then we don't see Flagg. I was hoping he'd change into different demons.
Yeah, he did that.
Yeah. And he didn't. He just kind of zapped out. He got hit a few times and then he zapped out and then he was gone. And then we see Ray and Larry under the water. Larry says something. He mouthed something to Ray. I think it was let go. I wasn't sure what he mouthed to her. Either he said it's okay or let go or something. And she, nodded and they drowned and then things blew up. So it seems as though they died in the water, maybe baptized, born again before everyone else died by fire, which was fitting, but it was something. And then all this time we got 2 to 3 glimpses of Stu. We got to talk about Stu. That happened too. One moment he was about Stu and Kojak, who saved the day. Oh my gosh, let's give it up for Kojak, the favorite character. Him and Tom Cullen. We saw Stu was about to take a lot of the pills. He's about to OD because he didn't think he was going to make it. Kojak whimpers, tells him, basically lets him know, don't do that. So that was a cute moment where Stu's like, okay, you win. I'm not going to do it. And then it seemed as though Flagg had sent a wolf or himself or some being to go face and maybe kill Stu as a wolf. And Kojak fought him. And I don't know if y'all, let me know, did y'all breath catch? Because I was like, oh my gosh, if they kill Kojak in this adaptation, I knew, I was ready. I was like, I'm going to turn off this episode. It would be this today, me telling y'all I didn't see the last 20 minutes if they had killed off Kojak, because I was ready to riot. I was like, they better not have Kojak get diddly wounded or something fighting this wolf and changing stuff up, because he's supposed to make it. And so Kojak makes it. He beats off the wolf. He keeps with Stu. And then finally in the blast that was very, as we were saying earlier, was very close to Stu and everything.
Unless he found a hydrogen bomb and just took out the entire state. I don't know.
Well, would a hydrogen bomb cause the same kind of decomposition of his body as a nuke?
I was thinking of a bigger radius. Oh no, deep cut. Like I got bored one day on YouTube and I watched this Soviet documentary about how they had a plan to drop a hydrogen bomb in the Marianas Trench, and that would severely impact the world, so they banned it. But I'm just thinking, like, it feels like Stu didn't fall back as far as he did in the original to be covered in smoke and dust and debris. And is Kojak okay? And like I see people in the comments, how Stu and Tom not get radiation poisoning, I don't know either, because even Kojak, like, I hope the hand of God is petting Kojak when this bomb went off. And because, like, there's 3 beings that are going to have radiation poisoning. I just don't know how that's, unless it was so far out that it was the wind that wasn't exactly with the nuke. But I just don't know how he's going to walk away with a broken leg and not, like, melt.
Yeah.
Unless the hand of God has covered them. Which goes into another biblical deep cut for a show that cut the biblical stuff out of it. Like, in some forms of Christianity, when the end times come, you can't be killed for a couple of years until Judgment Day actually happens. So maybe that's what's going to happen, and they can't die. But maybe I'm thinking way too deep about this in my private middle school.
It's probably going to be some type of miracle. Or maybe they're just hoping we don't notice. Because it seemed like Kojak was there yelling for Tom to come save Stu. And then Tom's walking. And Tom and them probably gets him out somehow within the nick of time. I don't know. How long does it take to get radiation poisoning? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. You
Yeah.
invited.
So maybe if they got out in time and, because I feel like it's supposed to be this idea of Tom nursing Stu back to health. So he can't do that if he's also dying of radiation poisoning. So I don't think they're going that route.
Yeah, Tom's walking through an orange, red, not earthly, healthy to breathe environment, and he's wearing a mask. Yeah, his face is protected, but he's got other holes, and he's got pores, and I don't know.
He wasn't even wearing a mask. He wasn't? No, it was just his beard, and he had his glasses, and he was looking.
What it was.
And he saw Kojak. Yeah.
Okay.
Victoria is saying in the chat, Kojak was the only character who actually had to physically fight and then save the day. Stu didn't do anything but fall off of the cliff.
And he didn't have to fight anyone in the beginning of the show.
You kind of wonder why Mother Abigail felt like he needed to be the one to lead. But that's not even just this one though. That was the other retellings as well that he falls.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's that, and then we have Zen kind of letting us know about the book a little bit. We were saying, I was surprised by the wolf. In the book, Kojak had to fight off wolves on his journey to Boulder to be with Glen. I didn't believe he would die because he didn't in the book. Yeah, that was my thinking too. I know Kojak doesn't die in the book or in the 93 version. So I thought, just as they had remixed Nadine's story, I was like, are they going to make it so he gets wounded too? I was just worried that they were going to remix it, and I was just like, don't do that. This is one of the three characters I love in this series. Like, don't do that. So, yeah. And Penguin was saying would be radioactive fallout everywhere. Radiation damage accumulates, so it looks bad for them. It does, but I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going that route. That would just be such a detour. Could you imagine them killing Tom and Kojak in the last episode? How pissed people would be, because I'm pretty sure we're not special snowflakes in the sense of we're the only ones who like those two characters the best.
No.
And Stu is like, as James Marsden, you can't kill him off.
No,
they make that mistake in X-Men. That's him and Cyclops, and we see how good that did him. So you don't do that to James Marsden. He doesn't make it that way to then die of radioactive poisoning. So I just don't see it happening. But that was pretty much the main thing. Oh, go ahead, Michael. What are you about to say?
No, I was just going to say it's funny how he's in a nuclear blast, and if he survives, he's probably going to go back and spend time with Franny, who's pregnant. So I'm like, okay, how he's going to bring his radioactive body if he can walk back there, and he's going to engage with a pregnant woman. That just doesn't seem healthy. And maybe I thought way too deep about that.
Yeah. Well, maybe, it's something that if they want us to forget it, then they probably will. But it's also kind of not as, as great as for them. And yes, MOON spells justice for Cyclops. We agree here. So then we get a quick glimpse of Boulder. Franny's water breaks. Joe senses that the dark man is gone. Franny's asking Joe if she senses Stu and all of them. She doesn't get a chance to, because her water breaks, and that's that. So she's probably going to have this baby next episode. So there's that. And I guess that's kind of our series finale with this, that's where things ended off at. So let's get to the comparisons, because we kind of talked about it throughout this episode. So we won't necessarily try to repeat some of those, but I think one of the main ones that stood out to me was the way that Glen died. And I did talk about that a little bit, where Glen actually they all get to face the dark man, up close, to closer than they did in this one. And Glen faces him, and basically in the 93 version, I believe in the book as well, basically calls them out and says, we made such a big deal about you, and here you are. And, once again, that showed, Randall lost it. He was really pissed at that. He was like, how dare you not tremble in front of me? And Glen's like, why would I do that? Da, 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 da. And then Randall is the one that orders Lloyd to shoot Glen. And Lloyd kind of hesitates, but then he's like, look, mister, in the 93 version, he's like, look, mister, this is the guy that's been there for, I got choices. I got things to do. And, Glen forgives him right before he dies, just as he forgave him in this one. And in this one, it was more so Lloyd felt pressured by the crowd and things like that. And then actually Glen being shot in front of the crowd is what stumbles Flagg's powers, which is, like we said, the kind of the switch of where his power source is from, or where his Achilles heel is. Because his Achilles heel, it seemed in the 93 version, was his insecurity, that he really wasn't as powerful as he made himself seem to be. And this one, it was like he could be powerful, but if you don't believe in him, he can't be powerful. So there was a little bit of change in that. I'm on the fence about it. I would have preferred for Flagg to have had that face off with Glen, but I do like that Glen was made to die in front of the audience, because I did think that was a bit more powerful. What did you think?
Can you repeat that? I think the audio kind of circuited a little bit.
I was saying I did think that was pretty powerful, that Glen died in front of the audience.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to in the jail cell with no one seeing them, like he did in the 93 version.
Yeah. I think it also fits with his personality too. That Lloyd was trying to put off, that he's like this flashy Vegas guy. And I think realizing that he had to kill this guy, he knew he was in too deep. But I think with everyone watching, I think that's how it should have been executed. Although an intimate jail cell is great, this one's, as far as like a recruitment tool and like the mind of a murderer, who's Randall Flagg, I think this was the better executed version of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I agree that Sabetti is saying in the chat, Stephen King knows people cannot handle a dog dying. I agree. And Zen is countering that by saying Cujo. I don't like to talk about Cujo. I don't know. I guess some people like that. I don't like to see animals being mean. And I feel like in that case, Cujo was the evil person, but Kojak's not evil. And I know in Pet Sematary, he also had the cat die, but the cat came back to life, even though he was evil. So technically the animals don't stay dead except for Cujo, who was the villain. There you have it. Yeah. So he had to die. So that is my reasoning for why Kojak cannot be killed. So that was one of the differences. And then I think also in the way that Larry and Ray's execution was carried out was also very different, because in the 93 version, and we talked at length about this already, about the fact that I think we both agreed that the crucifixion would have been better. But I also get that it would have left us without that moment of Larry being able to console Ray if they both were up on the crucifix and not connected to each other. So I got why it was kind of this way of them being able to be together and hold each other's hand while things happen.
Here's my only problem with that is I agree. I think it was very good. It was very good to tie up Larry and Ray, literally and figuratively. And I kind of like that. Although if you go on CBS All Access, which is about to be Paramount Plus, I believe, the poster is literally a electric telephone pole that got hit by an RV, and the telephone pole is up in the air as the crucifix. So the crucifix is in the marketing of this thing, yet they die in a pool.
Yeah. And we know people do get crucified, so.
Yeah, it seemed like a missed opportunity, or a tone down for a modern audience.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. And Damon Robinson is asking, did you call out Cujo? Kojak? You mean, see, Damon's confused too. We talking about Cujo so much. Other Stephen King piece, but yeah, he did. Stu did call out the Kojak because he wasn't sure. He heard a growl, and then we heard barking stop. So I was like, they better not have killed Kojak. So Kojak actually did, and now we have a whole. I think we set off a spark in our chat and let us know on the replay. A lot of people are now worried about Kojak, y'all, especially since Michael kept talking about radiation poisoning. So I blame you, Michael.
Okay, well, I blame the science that they didn't do, because I'm willing to bet, like, he's not a fan because he's not tweeting about it, but I just want to hear Neil deGrasse Tyson bring the truth on this episode. Like, well, actually, you have to be within a blast radius.
Yeah.
It's like,
or maybe it's because they were at the bottom. Maybe it didn't hit them as much and they got to take shelter. I don't know.
Maybe.
Give Me Shelter is also, speaking of shelter, Give Me Shelter is saying, wait, do we know why we only see 2 pregnant women in the series? There should be at least 100 women pregnant in New Vegas.
Yeah.
Just asking. Exactly. So, yeah. And we have a Save Kojak campaign going on, as rightfully we should. So, okay. So we talked about the way Glen died, which was different. I will say what I was saying about Larry and Ray, the other aspect of it besides the crucifixion that I think was very relevant or modern time was the fact that the way Rat Woman was doing it was like reality TV, right? It was like, keep the camera on him, get the things, go to people cheering. So it was very much this kind of, we couldn't do social media because that, isn't a thing at this time because it's the post-apocalypse and no one should be having Facebook and stuff during this time. But it was this thing of this kind of public people being so desensitized to things and being so roped in by this influencer that Flagg is being. So I kind of like that they played with that idea of movie magic, kind of playing up this really horrible thing that's happening, but because there's flashing lights and really, I did laugh out loud when the club music started and Alice Skarsgård was like, she starts going like this, like, I was like, okay, that's kind of cute and kind of on point for what is kind of happening. It's like, here's this public execution and it's like, cue the music. And everyone's like, yeah, we're about to kill these people. I love that. I'm not going to lie. That was a great moment, which once again shows there was so much potential in how they could have really made this relevant to these times, but still get to the heart of the story. And they were just missed moments. But that moment when he started dancing, I was like, see, that's that push and pull we should have got from this character. I'm so happy and cool, but then I'm also deadly and I could kill you because you pissed me off. And we didn't get enough of that. We only got that with his ending speech. And I felt like we should have been getting that throughout this series with this guy. Unfortunately, it was a really wasted villain right there. And Alex Skarsgård could have brought it because we've seen him play characters. So it's like, it's not like he wasn't able. They just didn't give him the material or the opportunity.
It's a shame because Flagg is probably my favorite Stephen King villain.
Yeah. Damon is noticing the wardrobe and saying, I'm loving Rat Woman's outfits. She had so many outfits. There were so many different things. Once again, they could have called her anything else but Rat Woman. I think it was just this idea of like, well, we got to give her a name from one of the characters from the story. So she's Rat Woman, sure. Because there was no reason why she needed to be that title for this. I
don't know, maybe when she was going through video stores like Teddy, right? No, not Teddy. Was it Teddy?
Yeah, it was Teddy.
Yeah, Teddy. Maybe she really loved Stuart Little and couldn't stop watching. I don't know. These are all refrigerator questions about a mouse and how she got Rat Woman. Or she's a snitch, but a deadly one. I don't know.
Because he was talking about drowning rats. I'm like, well, that's not very nice to Rat Woman. But it just didn't make sense. So
maybe she liked to kill rats. I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know. Did you notice any other major differences with the difference in the book? There was a difference with how Nadine died. Like we were saying before, she was supposed to die before Larry and them actually got to New Vegas, but she died after she got to talk to Larry, which I actually like that change because I think it was necessary for the story. Also, to speak to a little bit to the trash can thing, I mentioned it before, but my main issue was in the book, and I think also in the 90s series, one of the reasons why Trash Can left in those ones was because of the fact that he was actually working in Vegas, and then because he was being bullied there or whatnot, he ended up blowing up the planes, and he felt so bad that he goes to the desert to get this warhead in order to appease his master, Flagg, and so I felt that would have worked better, because what ends up happening is that out of nowhere he comes back with this thing, and no one realized he was going to do that. So it really that's what really throws everyone off, because it's like, what is he doing here with that? And even, Flagg is thrown off. With this one, they made it so Flagg sent him to it, but it was like, oh, you were supposed to meet me at the plane, and it was like, okay. Like, why do that? I don't know if it was because they needed us to meet Trash Can, so that would make sense. So they made it come and made, Randall tell him to do that. But I just felt like it was such a shift from the story, because Randall didn't really originally need him to do that.
Yeah, and we were talking about like a few episodes before that he kind of diverted, and he's like, here's the place I want you to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know, it felt weird. At least in the 90s version, I loved I forgot who the actor is, but he's a brilliant character actor. And he's been in a lot of really good things for the past 20 years. But I remember the flashbacks with his father. And it's like, ha, 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 trash. And then like he's burning stuff. And you really get to see a backstory that you didn't get at all in this one.
Yeah.
And
yeah. You just see aspects of that. Damon is also pointing out in the chat, Trash was doing it for I guess God. You didn't see when he pointed up and said my life for you the second time he said it. I was actually thinking about that too, because when he said my life for you, it was very interesting, because at one point it looked like he was looking at Randall Flagg, but then the other point when the smoking stuff was coming in, it looked like he was looking up at that. So I was like, he switched sides all of a sudden. It was very weird. But once again, because this series just was being very vague about a lot of stuff and just didn't care to explain things like you're supposed to do to new people coming into a story, we never really get that clear of a message of who he was actually talking to. But I do think you have a point, because I did notice that as well, where he was like, my life for you. And he didn't seem that upset that Flagg had disappeared. So it seemed like maybe he wasn't necessarily saying it to Flagg.
Yeah, I love that. That shines a brilliant light on David Robinson, everybody. Damon Robinson, great job. Wow. Yeah, I really think that's a great idea. Yeah,
that would make sense. I mean,
really
we
does.
would have gotten no kind of inkling that he was about to do that previous to this, because he was still jerking off the fire. But hey, maybe he just decided, I'm going to blow this guy up, and I've been an undercover God agent this whole time, and ha ha ha, joke's on you. We're all going to blow up together. Maybe he thing.
Maybe he just loves God, and that's what he was doing it for. Who knows? Like,
yeah, it was still not too much explained then why Mother Abigail thought the three of them needed to go, or the four of them needed to go. But yeah. Thank you so much, Victoria, with the super chat. I appreciate you. Let's give it up for Victoria. Look, I just love the shade that you're always throwing. It's always lovely when you're in the chat. And Victoria is saying, just thinking season 2 or nah. It would depend on how they tell this story. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
If they, I don't know. Like, I hope we find out new Captain Trip civilizations, maybe. Like, could be like the Captain Trip Chronicles, like what happened in Latin America.
Maybe different. No, because then it would become like Walking Dead, where they go to here. We don't need that.
No, we don't.
I feel like, Victoria, my honest opinion is that they wrote themselves in the corner by not lengthening out this season. What they, like we've been saying, I feel like what they should have originally done was make it so that we got people going to Boulder and New Vegas forming in the first season. And then, everything's settled. We get Boulder and stuff, life in Boulder, them trying to settle things in Vegas season 2. And then season 3 could have been the build up to the stand. You could have had 3 seasons of this show, and you could have gone through everybody's backstory. There's so much story in that. I mean, Michael, hold up the book. There's so much story. There are so many backstories. Like Tom has a whole backstory of a life. Nick, Trash Can Man Trash Can Man has a whole story of him getting to Vegas with the kid. There's a character in there that never comes up called the kid. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know what I mean? So it's
1,100 pages.
Yeah, there's so much story they could have done. And I don't know why they just decided to just try to rush in a season 1 of this and then perhaps do this, this whole thing where they have a whole new story that we never heard of when they have a book that has so much story in it already. You don't need to create something new. So that's my honest opinion.
No, I totally Fear of the Stand, Dallas edition.
Yes.
Oh my God, I love that. But yeah, I only brought that up because in the book they cover the waves and what happened to the rest of the world, and there's potential for that. But I don't know if the writers of CBS, and I hope I'm not blacklisting myself, the writers of CBS, I don't know, maybe they were rushed, but this is definitely underutilized. It's an underutilized version of what we could have had.
Exactly. No, yeah. I mean, that's definitely, there was so much. I was hoping, y'all, because people were asking, why are y'all pushing through? Funny enough, I remember when Victoria, I think you had commented on episode 2 and you were saying, I'm not feeling this so far. And I was like, well, episode 3 kind of starts to make more sense and it gets better. And I think we all were saying episode 3, okay, that was great. This is going to turn better. And that's not what we got necessarily. I don't really know what could happen in the next episode to turn it around at this point, short of perhaps a look at some brand new season 2 we ain't never heard of.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you think of like Game of Thrones and everything, I think people are going to be really disappointed as it feels like series finales have become prologue and not necessarily in a Lord of the Rings type way. Like, you're not fighting Mordor anymore. You're having 7 endings that happened. Like, and I feel like this is the most action-packed the show can get. I mean, Stephen King could throw us a few surprises for like season 2 or the Franny Chronicles, or maybe
I do not want
I don't want it either. I don't want either. My big problem with this, really, in this world, pills was the only way people were killing themselves.
Yeah, it just seemed a little. Yeah, there was a lot going on there.
Yeah, it was like an emo. It was like an emo version of The Stand.
Yeah, it really was. Give Me Shelter was saying the unabridged version is 1,400 pages. I don't have that many years left to finish that book. Yes.
Yeah. I don't either.
Penguin is saying money limited the series, no doubt. Yeah, I could see that.
Probably.
Although I think the 93 version covered so much, it's not as in depth as they could have, but it did cover a bit better, I think. And Give Me Shelter is asking, are we reviewing the 90s series for this channel? Maybe that might be something we need to do to just kind of go through it, perhaps, maybe an overview. If people might be, let us know in the chat and in the replay. If, for those of you who haven't watched it, maybe we can, do something about it or whatnot, kind of the major points and everything. So we'll see. Was there any other major differences? Because I felt like Trash Can Man, I mean, if Damon is right on that, that's definitely a difference. Trash Can Man that's switching sides or kind of being an undercover God agent all the time. So those were kind of the major 3 that I saw. And perhaps our 3 fave characters getting radiation poisoning. That would really be different.
Yeah, right.
I feel like Stu being as close to the blast as he was, and Tom as well. They weren't supposed to be that close to the blast. For some reason, I think it was for a dramatic effect, but that's what we got. So. Yeah,
because in the 90s version, Stu looks up and it looks like there's a little bit of a sunrise in the
pretty much what Franny and Joe saw.
Yeah.
That's what he was supposed to see. So,
That's why I'm like, was this really an atomic bomb?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because I don't know. I'm not nuclear physics. Maybe somebody in the chat is, but can you Can you visibly see a nuclear bomb from Colorado in Nevada with mountain ranges on
That's what
top of
I was
that?
wondering too. Listen,
I don't.
suspension of disbelief, y'all.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in this show.
Yes. Okay. So as we wind it down, I asked you
Stu's
all
in
a
Utah.
question. I asked you, Stu is supposed to be in you. Okay, so he's not supposed to be super close. Yet somehow the blast hit there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And I know, sorry, that was, I know I shouldn't be reading comments, but it popped up in the corner of my eye. Thank you, Zen Music Lover. Yeah, Stu was supposed to be in Utah. And that's why I was asking if it was like a hydrogen bomb and not a nuclear bomb. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what type of warhead did Trash really take out?
Yeah, that may explain it. That may honestly explain it. So maybe there won't be any radiation poisoning. Maybe it's just a ricochet. I have no idea. Yeah, Matt C is saying title of episode 9 is Coda, Franny, in the Well. So
is it? I mean, you saw all the interest from my face disappear, and I was clearly joking when I said.
But Franny is the center. She is the center of episode 9 because her baby is supposed to be one of the first ones that's born in the new world. So
are we gonna have a medical drama for the finale? Like, is it just gonna be Franny's in the hospital?
Well, Franny and probably Stu trying to get back to her. That's my guess.
Yeah.
For this one. Okay. So I asked you all a question in the beginning of this, and thank you all so much for joining us in the chat. And thank you for those who are watching the replay. And thank you to Victoria for that super chat. And yeah, we love super chats here. I love super chats. And I want to get like a soundboard thing so I can also just give y'all like really cool sounds when y'all do super chats as well, because I think that's really cool. And but even without that, I just, it's really great, all this, conversation, because I love talking stories, as you know, when it comes to this channel. But I asked you all, and I'm going to go to Michael soon, who was your favorite character this episode? Who resonated with you the most in this episode? And who did you dislike the most this episode? So let us know in the chat and also the replay, and I'll highlight your answers and whatnot. And Michael, who did you like the best this episode, and who did you dislike this episode?
I think it's a toss-up between, and I don't know why, it's not the writing. I know the character's name, but the teacher,
Glen.
I don't know why I can't remember Glen. I always want to call him Cullen, but that is Tom Cullen. I really like Glen the most. Probably a second would be a tie of Ray and Kojak. And I really liked Lloyd, but because I understand what he was about, he just got caught up.
Okay, but this episode,
probably Glen would be the one I liked the best, and the one that I liked the very, very least, just because he was underutilized, and it's a real shame, was probably Randall Flagg.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, for me, I really, it's a tie for me. I think it's either Larry, for sure. Larry really, like I said, and I say this as someone who really, I just was wondering, when are they going to show why Larry's as special as he is, especially since they're not having him sing the song. And we only heard it once when they finally got to the Vegas casino. And I think he really showed through this episode. And I thought he had so many great, lines and moments in it, and it was really great. And I think there's layers to it. I don't know if maybe that was why they changed his race too. The whole idea of this. I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, maybe that's also why they didn't do the crucifixion. Maybe it would have been weird to see a black man and an indigenous woman, the two last people of color, being crucified in front of this audience. I mean, there's that. The optics of that would have just seemed real messed up. But I thought there was, I don't think they did it. I don't think they did it on purpose, but inadvertently by the casting, I think there was a lot of layers in Larry's position that he found himself in. So I kind of like that. And I just liked how he kind of finally showed through. Unfortunately, it was in the episode that he died, but I like that he showed through. I think it's also a tie between him and Kojak, of course. Kojak is anytime Kojak is in this episode, he's gonna be a default my favorite character, him or Tom. But Tom came in at the very end, so it's a tie between Larry and Kojak for sure. In terms of the least likes, I'm gonna agree with you with Randall Flagg, only because there was so much more I felt like they could have had him do, and he just once again he was playing a background character to all of these characters. And how do you do that when you're the main villain? I just don't see how he was playing the background boogeyman and he's the villain, you know? And so that was just kind of weird for me. I wasn't feeling that, you know? Penguin in the chat is saying Larry or Glen, a toss up for best. Zen is saying, I loved Larry for once in this episode, saying Glen was a close second. I hated Flagg and Ratwoman. Yeah, Ratwoman, I could take her or leave her. Don't even know why that was. I mean, honestly, I kid you not. If people did not know this series or know this story, they would not know that was Ratwoman. I kid you not, no one would have known that was Ratwoman because there would have been no reason. They wouldn't have known her name because there would have been no reason to know her name. That's what's so bad to me of the execution of this stuff, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking Stuart Ratatouille. I thought you would have been like a fan of Ratatouille with DVDs or something. I don't know. That's the mouse movie I'm thinking of.
That's too much pop culture reference for them.
But you wouldn't know. Yeah, you wouldn't know she was Ratwoman.
Yeah. Give Me Shelter says, edit, I wish Glen had more screen time. I really want a Glen and Tom buddy spinoff. MOON spell CBS, make it happen. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, let us know in the chat and also in the replay, you know, who you like the best and who you dislike. And also my question on whether or not you think Randall Flagg was a wasted villain this series. I kind of feel like he was a wasted villain for this miniseries, unfortunately. And I think that's a big disappointment for me anyway. But let me know what your thoughts are when it comes to that. And Damon is saying, I know this is going to throw you, but I actually liked Lloyd this episode. Whoa, Damon liked Lloyd this episode. For those of you who this might be your first time at the live stream or replay, thanks for joining us. Damon Robinson, who happens to also be my brother, y'all, who also watches a lot of similar television that I do. He did not like Lloyd. That was an ongoing joke for us that he did not like Lloyd. And that is so funny that he liked Lloyd this episode. That's very funny. I liked Lloyd this episode too, in a way. You know, I didn't dislike Lloyd for this for the series, but yeah, it was good that he came around and he finally said no.
Yeah, he was my almost favorite character.
Almost of the whole series. Yeah, you love Lloyd.
I love Lloyd. I love what he's all about, and I love his potential that he had, and I love that he wasn't 100% evil. He was a gray character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the characters showed through. Poor Ray didn't get a lot.
No.
And she should have got more, but I'm glad that she got something. And it was really, I think, poignant that Ray was in here because representation matters, y'all. Yeah. And I was glad that she was there and played the role that she did, that she could do. So go ahead.
I was going to say, and you're right. I wasn't thinking about that, unfortunately, but about the visual between Ray and Larry being crucified, being one of the only people of color in your whole show who survived. That's probably not a good look. So thank you for that perspective. And yeah, I like the pool scene.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, y'all. So we have reached the end of our discussion of episode 8, and we are going into episode 9 next week. It will be the series finale or maybe a season finale if we get season 2 for this. But thank you all so much for joining us. Give Me Shelter in the chat is saying that Randall was wasted. Marvel did it right with Thanos, threatened him for several movies, and then when he came out, he did not disappoint as a villain. So points are being made still in the chat, rightfully so, when it comes to the use of Randall Flagg, because and for those who might not know, who might not have read other Stephen King books or read any Stephen King books, Randall Flagg has very different forms in Stephen King's stories. So there's a lot there. And I think maybe that's why I felt a certain way, because there's so much to explore with this character that it seemed like he got shortchanged in the way he was displayed in this one. So we'll see. Maybe this isn't the last we'll see of him. We'll see of that. But thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I post a lot of videos about horror and reviews and things like this, live streams, TV autopsy, movie autopsy. For those of you who are watching WandaVision, you can join me and my brother Damon, who is also in the chat on Saturday, as we talk WandaVision episodes at 4:00 Saturday Pacific time, 7:00 Eastern time. And once again, thank you all for joining us. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And also stay safe out there, and let's get creepy together. Woo!